Finally, let's get going. Begin by creating a new document. Just go up File, New, and select Part, and click OK. Now, to display the planes, click on the front plane in the Feature Manager, and then shift-click the right plane beneath it. Then click on the blue eyeglasses icon from the Context pop-up menu to show all of those planes. We can then click in the viewport to deselect them. I'm going to go up to the viewport navigator and select my isometric view so that we can see all the planes at once. Now, the basis for our lens is going to be a revolved solid. Think of a revolve like turning round chair legs on a lathe. Any round, radially symmetric shape will probably be created this way. So, to create a revolve feature, we'll first need an axis of revolution to define the center of the lens. We can do that with the menu bar, Insert, Reference Geometry, Axis tool, or we can go to the Toolbar ribbon, Features tab, Reference Geometry, Axis. The Property Manager will appear at the left, and the command prompt at the bottom of the window asks us to select entities to define the axis. We want the axis to exist exactly where the top and right planes meet. So all we have to do is click on those two planes, and we'll see that the result is exactly where we want the axis to be. To exit the tool, you can click on the green checkbox at the top right of the viewport, or at the green checkbox at the top of the Property Manager. You could also right-click in the viewport and select OK, but my personal favorite is just to hit the Enter key on the keyboard. In this video, we're going to be practicing the most fundamental tool set in SolidWorks, the sketcher. Just about any time you want to create a curve in SolidWorks, you're going to be creating what's called a sketch. You can think of a sketch like a group of related 2D geometry. It's critical that you take the time to master the sketcher in SolidWorks. Without it, you are a ship with no sails. So, to draw sketch elements, you first have to create a sketch, going to the menu bar, saying Insert, and going down to Sketch. Or the Toolbar ribbon, go to the Sketch tab, and click on Sketch. Notice that the Property Manager appears on the left with a yellow box that requests that you select a plane on which to place your sketch. You're going to be sketching on a 2D plane, and it needs to know which one. So let's go ahead and choose the right plane, because we're going to be sketching on the right plane, and our view will move to reflect that decision. Now, there are at least 4 ways we can tell that we are currently editing a sketch. Number 1, the Exit and Cancel Sketch buttons are visible at the top right of the screen. Number 2, the Sketch icon in the Toolbar ribbon has been replaced with a highlighted Exit Sketch button. Number 3, a new sketch item called Sketch 1 is now visible in our Feature Manager below the rollback bar. And number 4, most importantly, the status bar at the bottom right of the window says Editing Sketch 1, which should make it obvious that we are doing exactly that. Now, to draw a line, we need to select the Line tool. Sketch tools can be accessed a variety of ways. For example, to draw a line, you can go up to the menu bar, Tools, Sketch Entities, Line. You could also go to the Toolbar ribbon, Sketch tab, select the Line tool from there. You could also right-click in the viewport and go down and select Line from the context menu. You could hit the S key on the keyboard and select the Line tool from the shortcut box, or you could do my personal favorite, easiest of all, just hit the L key on the keyboard, L as in line, which is the method that I'll be using. Now, somewhere up above my origin and touching the front plane, I want to draw a line by clicking once, moving my mouse down, and clicking again. Notice I didn't drag the mouse, I just clicked to define the start and end points. I can then use my mouse to zoom in a little bit using the mouse wheel, and then click to define another line. It's going to keep going until I either hit the Escape key or close the shape, which is what I'm going to do in this case. Notice that as I move the mouse, I get little dotted lines indicating that I have lined up a point with some other piece of geometry. This is really useful. I'm going to make use of that as I draw this shape. Work my way around, and finally close off the shape. Now, that's all well and good, but it's not very precise. Unlike lots of other 2D drafting applications, in SolidWorks we don't have to think ahead very much about the dimensions of our model. We can draw a rough shape to start and then add dimensions until we have, quote, fully defined our sketch. Now, we don't have to use fully defined sketches, but it's going to be very helpful if we do. But before we add any dimensions to this, let's go ahead and take a look at what we've created. I'm going to go over to the Feature Manager tree and hide all of those planes again, just so we don't have to look at them, and zoom in a little bit on our sketch. So we have a bunch of blue lines here and one black line. Let's look at what the difference between those is. First of all, if I grab a blue line and I drag it, you can see that it moves. If I grab a blue point and I drag it, it allows me to move that point. So I can very easily make changes to this sketch. However, if I click and drag the black line, nothing happens. That's because that black line is fully defined or fully constrained. When we created this black line, we clicked and snapped to that front plane, if you'll recall, which created a constraint telling SolidWorks that this line should always be coincident with or touching that front plane. So if I click on that line, you'll see that a couple of constraints appear. One of them is a vertical line constraint, telling us that this line should always be perfectly vertical. The other is a collinear constraint, telling us that this front plane should be collinear with this line. If I were to click and delete that collinear constraint, the line turns blue again, and we're able to move it. But I'm going to undo that because I do want for this line to be coincident with the front plane. Now, I happen to know that we've sketched this way too big, so if we wanted to, we could come through here and scale this all down until it seemed like a more appropriate size. But we don't actually have to do that all manually like this. If we want to, we can do that using the Smart Dimension tool. So let's go ahead and add some dimensions here. Let's go up to the Smart Dimension tool in the toolbar ribbon, or right-click in the viewport and jump up to Smart Dimension. Once we've activated the tool, all we have to do is click on something that we want to add a dimension to. For example, I know that the distance from this line to this line should be 8.25 millimeters, and hit enter. Alright, so things moved around a little bit, but that's okay. We're just getting the dimensions the way that we want them. We also know that the dimension from this line to this line is going to be 1.25 millimeters. From this line to this line is also 1.25 millimeters. I know that the total depth of this little valley here is actually going to be 2 millimeters. So I'll just set that to 2. And things are going to start to get a little bit out of whack. So I'm going to hit the Escape key to drop the Smart Dimension tool for a second. And then I can click and drag this line right back down to where I want it. Now the thing is, I kind of always want for this line to be even with that line. So all we have to do is click one line, and then hold the Control key and click the other. That will allow me to add a collinear constraint over here on the left, or in the pop-up menu out here in the viewport as well, there's a Make Collinear button. So when I click that, now these two lines will always be collinear. When I drag one of them, they both move. I know that I want for this line 0.5 millimeters across. I'll hit the Escape key to drop the tool and drag this line up some. And I know that I want for the length of this line to be 1.25 millimeters. We also know that the height, the overall height from this line to that line should be 10.9 millimeters. Drag this stuff down. Show you another way to define a dimension. I know that the distance from this line to this line should be 5.1 millimeters. So I can come over here to the Dimension Properties dialog and set that dimension to 5.1 and hit enter. That should do the same thing. I can do the same thing here. I know that the distance from this line to this one I've measured to be 5.9 millimeters. And now we're getting dangerously close to what I call a fully defined sketch. If I click and drag any one of these blue lines, you'll see that everything moves up and down proportionally. Nothing changes except that we're just dragging this up and down. That means that we only need one more definition. We need the distance from the top plane, down here at the origin, to the top of this line. So what I can do is Smart Dimension, click the top plane in the Feature Manager, and then click this top line to define a dimension. Now I know that I want for this dimension to be half of 58.5 millimeters. And I can do that simply by typing 58.5 over 2 and hitting enter. That will calculate the exact dimension, 29.25, and go ahead and input it into our dimension. I can drag these dimensions around if I want to clean up this view a little bit, make it a little bit easier to read all of them. And once I've done that, go ahead and exit the sketch by clicking on the Sketch Confirm button at the top right of the Sketch window.